The hospital smell made Emma nauseous. Or maybe it was the fear. The surgery costs $200,000, Dr. Martinez said, his voice clinical, detached. Without it, she has 3 months. Maybe 4. Emma stared at her mother's frail hand in hers, the 4 taped crookedly to paper-thin skin. 3 months. The words echoed in her skull like a death sentence. Can we do a payment plan? Emma's voice cracked. I work 3 jobs, I can. Miss Chun. The doctor's expression said everything his words didn't. You can't afford this. You'll never afford this. The hospital requires 50% upfront. I'm sorry. Emma had $847 in her bank account. After the doctor left, she sat in the fluorescent silence, holding her mother's hand, watching the heart monitor beep its steady rhythm. Each sound a reminder that time was running out. Don't cry, baby girl. Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. We'll figure something out. But they wouldn't. Emma knew they wouldn't. She'd already sold everything worth selling. She worked at a coffee shop, cleaned offices at night, did freelance data entry until her eyes burned. Every penny went to rent and medical bills. She had nothing left to give except Emma. She looked up. Richard stood in the doorway, her stepfather who'd never visited once during the 6 months of her mother's illness. He wore an expensive suit she'd never seen before, his graying hair slicked back, a leather briefcase in his hand. We need to talk, he said. Outside, in the hospital corridor, Richard handed her a business card. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Zhao Family Holdings. I found a solution, Richard said, his smile not reaching his eyes. A wealthy family needs a bride for their son. Contract marriage. 1 year, $200,000. No real relationship required. Just signatures and appearances. Emma's stomach turned. You want me to sell myself? I want you to save your mother. Richard's voice hardened. Unless you have a better option? Another 200,000 lying around. She didn't. The son is difficult, Richard continued, not meeting her eyes. But the family is well-connected. Respectable. 1 year of your life, Emma. That's all. Then you're free, and your mother lives. Emma looked back through the doorway at her mother's hospital bed. The steady beep of the heart monitor. 3 months without the surgery. Maybe 4. When? She whispered. 3 days. I'll send you the details. Richard squeezed her shoulder, and she fought the urge to shrug him off. You're doing the right thing. After he left, Emma returned to her mother's bedside and cried silently, so the woman who'd given her everything wouldn't hear her break. 3 days later, Emma stood in the marble lobby of the Grandview Hotel, clutching a manila envelope that contained her future. Inside, a contract that would bind her to a stranger for 12 months. Outside, a mother who would die without this choice. She wore a simple white dress from a thrift store, altered herself because she couldn't afford a tailor. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Maybe I've always been for sale, Emma thought, staring at the envelope. Maybe I just never knew my price until now. $200,000. That's what I'm worth. The exact cost of my mother's life. Miss Chun, a woman in a crisp hotel uniform approached, clipboard in hand, professional smile fixed in place. Please come with me. The family is waiting. Emma followed on numb legs, each step taking her further from the girl she used to be. The coordinator led her to the elevators, pressed a button, and they rose in silence. Emma watched the numbers climb. 10th floor, 15th, 18th. The elevator dinged. Doors opened. Suite 1880, the coordinator said, gesturing down a carpeted hallway. Please go ahead. I'll be right behind you. Emma walked toward the suite, her reflection ghost-like in the polished walls. At the door, she hesitated, hand raised a knock. This is it. After this, there's no going back. She knocked. Enter, a voice called from inside. Male. Deep. Cold. Emma pushed open the door and stepped into a suite more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever been. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. A massive desk held a laptop and scattered papers. And by those windows stood a man in an expensive suit, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. The contract is on the table, he said without turning around, still focused on his call. Read it carefully before signing. My lawyer will witness. This is a business transaction. I expect professionalism. Emma's hands trembled as she approached the desk and picked up the contract. The numbers made no sense. This contract offered $500,000, not $200,000. The term was 6 months, not 12. And the name at the top, Alexander Kane. She'd heard that name. Everyone had. The youngest self-made billionaire in the country. But Richard had said the Zhao family. Richard had said. The man by the window ended his call and turned around. Their eyes met. Emma gasped. This man looked nothing like the photos Richard had shown her. This man was younger, sharper, devastatingly handsome in a way that stole her breath. His gray eyes narrowed in confusion, scanning her face. "Who are you?" he asked coldly. Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I'm Emma Chen. I'm here for the contract marriage." She swallowed hard. "Aren't you?" "Zhao Wei." The man stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Zhao Wei." His voice was sharp cold. "Who the hell is Zhao Wei?" Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't understand." Richard said. "Who's Richard?" He took a step toward her, and Emma instinctively stepped back. "And I'll ask again. Who are you?" "Emma Chun." Her voice trembled. "I'm here for the contract marriage. I was told to come to the Grandview Hotel, Suite 1880, to sign." She looked down at the contract in her shaking hands. "But this isn't right. The numbers are wrong. The name is wrong. Everything is." The door burst open. A young woman in a sleek pantsuit rushed in, slightly out of breath, followed by a flustered hotel coordinator. "Mr. Kane, I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at Emma. "Who is that?" The man, Mr. Kane, apparently, closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Let me guess. You're Sophia Liu." "Yes." The woman looked between Emma and Alexander, confusion written across her polished features. "The contracted bride? We had an appointment at 3 p.m. "It's 3:15, Alexander said flatly. The hotel coordinator's face had gone pale. "Oh no. Oh no. No. No." She frantically flipped through papers on her clipboard. "Suite 1880 and Suite 1808. There's another contract signing happening simultaneously downstairs. Miss Chun, you were supposed to go to 1808, Emma whispered, the reality crashing over her like ice water. "I'm in the wrong room." Her phone buzzed violently in her purse. She pulled it out with numb fingers. 7 missed calls from Richard. 8 texts, each more frantic than the last. "Where are you? The Zhao family is waiting. Emma, answer me. Right now, you're ruining everything." "I have to go." Emma shoved the contract back onto the desk, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This was a mistake." "Wait." Alexander's command was quiet but absolute. "Show me your contract." "What?" "The contract you were supposed to sign." "Show me." Emma hesitated, then pulled the crumpled manila envelope from her purse. Her contract, the real one from the Zhao family. Alexander took it, his eyes scanning the pages with the focused intensity of someone who'd read 1,000 contracts before. His jaw tightened. Then his expression went ice cold. "You were going to sign this?" His voice was dangerously soft. "Ah, yes. I have to. My mother. This contract is exploitative." He flipped to the second page. 200,000 over 12 months, paid in installments you'll never see. Clause here gives the family complete control over your movements, your finances, your personal life. You'd essentially be an indentured servant. He looked up at her, those gray eyes sharp. "And there's no termination clause that doesn't result in you owing them money. This isn't a contract marriage. This is a trap." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. I know it's bad, but I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Easy to say when you're not drowning." The words burst out of her, sharp and desperate. "My mother is dying. She needs surgery that costs $200,000, and I have $847 in my bank account. So forgive me if I don't have the luxury of your principles." Silence fell over the suite. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. The coordinator looked like she wanted to disappear into the carpet. Alexander studied Emma for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he did something unexpected. He picked up his own contract, the one meant for Sophia, and held it out to Emma. Then sign mine instead. Emma stared at him. What? My contract. 6 months, $500,000, paid in full upfront. No control clauses, no financial manipulation, no indentured servitude. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing a corporate merger. You need money urgently, or you wouldn't be here. I need a wife for 6 months to satisfy my grandfather's will before he passes. It's purely transactional, but at least you won't be signing away your humanity. You don't even know me. I don't need to. I know that contract. He gestured to the Zhao family papers with disgust. And I know the Zhao family's reputation. If you sign with them, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. However long that life might be. The implication hung in the air. Emma's stomach turned. Sophia cleared her throat. Alexander, perhaps we should discuss this. You're dismissed, Miss Liu. Alexander pulled out a checkbook, wrote something quickly, and handed it to the woman. Cancellation fee as agreed, plus 20% for your inconvenience. Sophia glanced at the check, her eyebrows rising. Thank you, Mr. Kane. She nodded to Emma, something like sympathy in her eyes, and left. The coordinator fled after her, muttering about fixing the mistake. Then it was just Emma and Alexander Kane, standing in a luxury suite, a contract between them. Emma's phone buzzed again. Richard. The Zhao family would be furious. Richard would be furious. But as she looked at the two contracts, one that would make her a prisoner, one that offered her a way out, the choice became clear. What? Emma asked quietly. Why would you do this for a stranger? Alexander was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost some of its cold edge. Because I've spent my entire life watching people get used by those with more power. And today, for once, I can do something about it. He met her eyes. The question isn't why I'm offering. The question is, are you brave enough to take it? Emma looked down at Alexander's contract. $500,000. 6 months. No exploitación, no trap. Then she looked at her phone, at Richard's furious messages, at the Zhao family waiting downstairs with their cage, disguised as an opportunity. She'd spent her whole life making choices that weren't really choices, doing what she was told, being grateful for scraps. But this was a real choice. A terrifying one, but real. Emma picked up the pen from Alexander's desk. Where do I sign? Alexander's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or respect. Page 7. Initial every page before it. Emma's hand shook as she signed her name, Emma Chun, in black ink. With each initial, each signature, she felt like she was burning bridges she'd never be able to rebuild. When she finished, Alexander took the contract, signed his own name, and then extended his hand. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Kane. Emma shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, real. And for the first time in 3 days, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd made the right choice. Even if she had no idea what came next. The penthouse was a palace made of glass and steel. Emma stood in the center of the living room, her single suitcase looking pathetic against the marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below her like a kingdom she'd never be part of, glittering, distant, untouchable. Your bedroom is in the east wing. Alexander's housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, no relation, gestured down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever. Mr. Kane's suite is in the west wing. He values his privacy. Of course he does, Emma thought. This is business, remember? Her room was larger than the apartment she'd shared with her mother. King-size bed with Egyptian cotton sheets. Walk-in closet already filled with clothes in her exact size. How'd he known? Ensuite bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Everything was white, pristine, untouched. It felt like a hospital room. Clean, cold, sterile. Emma sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. The explosion came 3 hours later. Emma heard shouting from the penthouse entrance and emerged from her room to find Richard being physically restrained by building security. Alexander stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. You ruined everything. Richard's face was purple with rage. The Zhao family is threatening to sue me. I lost a $50,000 finder's fee because of you. You ungrateful. Finder's fee. Alexander's voice cut through the tirade like a blade. You sold your stepdaughter to a family with a documented history of abuse. For $50,000. Richard's eyes shifted to Emma. Get your things. We're leaving. This whole thing is. Miss Chen isn't going anywhere. Alexander stepped forward, and despite being smaller than Richard, he somehow filled the space with quiet menace. And if you contact her again, I'll ensure every business connection you have in this city disappears. I'll make certain you never profit from human trafficking again. Are we clear? You can't. I can. I will. Try me. Security dragged Richard toward the elevator. His last words echoed down the hallway. You'll regret this, Emma. Nobody else will want you. You're nothing without me. The elevator doors closed. Emma realized she was shaking. Are you all right? Alexander's voice was softer now, almost gentle. He sold me. The words came out flat, hollow. He actually sold me. For $50,000. Yes. My mother married him when I was 8. I called him Dad for 16 years. Emma laughed, but sounded broken. Turns out I was just an investment all along. Alexander said nothing, but something flickered in his expression. Understanding, maybe. Thank you, Emma whispered, for stopping him. You don't need to thank me for basic human decency. Alexander checked his watch. I have a conference call. Make yourself comfortable. Mrs. Chun will bring dinner at 7. Then he was gone, retreating to his wing of the penthouse, and Emma was alone again in her golden cage. The next morning, Emma woke before dawn, old habits from working 3 jobs, and found her way to the kitchen. She pulled instant ramen from her purse, the cheap kind she'd lived on for months, and was boiling water when Alexander appeared. He was in workout clothes, hair damp from what must have been an early gym session. He stared at the ramen like it was a bomb. What are you doing? Making breakfast? Emma stirred the noodles defensively. There's a fully stocked kitchen. Mrs. Chun prepared fresh pastries. The chef comes at 8. Alexander opened the refrigerator, revealing enough food to feed an army. Why are you eating instant ramen? Because it's mine. I paid for it. Something shifted in his expression. Emma, you signed a contract. Room and board are included. You don't need to. I don't want to know more than I already do. They stared at each other across the kitchen island. The ramen continued boiling, the cheap smell filling the expensive space. This isn't a debt, Alexander said finally. It's an arrangement. I'm not keeping a ledger. Maybe you're not, but I am. Alexander studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and typed something. Noted. Enjoy your breakfast. He left. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Chun appeared with fresh groceries and a message. Mr. Kane says the kitchen is yours to use as you wish. He asks that you stop hiding in your room to eat. Emma found herself almost smiling. The rules came that evening. Alexander summoned her to his office, a room lined with books and dominated by a massive desk covered in multiple monitors. He gestured to a chair. Emma sat. We should discuss expectations, Alexander said, pulling up a document on a screen. This marriage is a legal arrangement to satisfy my grandfather's will. He's dying, and his final wish is to see me married. After he passes, we'll maintain the marriage for 6 months to avoid suspicion, then divorce quietly. I understand. We'll have separate bedrooms, separate lives. I won't interfere with your personal matters, and I ask the same courtesy. We'll appear together for family events and occasional public functions. Otherwise, you're free to do as you wish. Emma nodded, throat tight. It was everything she'd expected, but hearing it laid out so clinically still hurt. The money will be transferred to your account tomorrow, Alexander continued. All of it, up front as agreed. Use it however you need. For my mother's surgery. I know. His expression softened slightly. The hospital has already been contacted. They're prepared to schedule her surgery as soon as you give the word. Emma's eyes burned. Thank you. It's in the contract. Still, thank you. Alexander looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. He turned back to his monitors. That's all. You're free to go. Emma stood to leave, then paused at the door. Alexander, yes. Why did you really help me? And don't say it's just business. He was quiet for so long Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, because I know what it's like to be trapped by other people's expectations. To have your whole life planned out without anyone asking what you want. He met her eyes. I thought maybe you deserved one choice that was actually yours to make. Emma's chest ached. Thank you for giving me that. Don't thank me yet, Alexander said quietly. You might end up regretting this choice too. 2 weeks into the arrangement, Emma caught a fever. She'd been pushing herself too hard, visiting her mother daily, working her coffee shop job despite Alexander's protests, refusing to fully accept that her circumstances had changed. Her body finally rebelled. At 3 a.m., Emma stumbled to the kitchen for water and collapsed. She woke to someone carrying her. Strong arms. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with something warm, human. I've got you, Alexander's voice murmured. You're okay. He laid her in her bed, not his, and pressed a hand to her forehead. His palm was cool against her burning skin. You're working yourself to death, he said, and for the first time since they'd met, he sounded angry. Why are you still working at that coffee shop? Because I need to. You don't. The contract. The contract doesn't define who I am. Emma's voice was hoarse. I'm not just your temporary wife. I'm not just someone who needs rescuing. Her voice broke. I need to still be me. Alexander was quiet. Then, stay here. I'll get medicine. He returned with a first aid kit that looked barely used, rummaged through it with adorable incompetence, and finally produced fever reducers and a thermometer. He made her take the pills, brought water, adjusted her pillows. You don't have to do this, Emma whispered. I know. He pulled a chair beside her bed. But I'm going to anyway. Why? Because you're not a contract to me anymore. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. I don't know what you are, but you're not just business. Emma's fever-fogged brain couldn't process this. Alexander, sleep. We'll talk when you're better. She drifted off to the sound of him working on his laptop, staying beside her through the night. Like he was afraid she'd disappear if he looked away. When Emma woke the next morning, Alexander was gone. But there was a note on her nightstand in sharp, precise handwriting. Take the day off. Both jobs. That's an order from your temporary husband. Ugh. Despite everything, Emma smiled. Maybe this cage wasn't as cold as she'd thought. You need to look at me like you love me. Emma stood in Alexander's arms in the center of the penthouse living room, his hand on her waist, teaching her to waltz. 2 months had passed since she'd signed the contract. Tomorrow was their first public appearance, a charity gala where they'd need to convince society that their marriage was real. I'm trying, Emma muttered, staring at his chest instead of his face. Try harder. The media will be watching. Alexander's voice was patient but firm. You're supposed to be madly in love with me. That's a tall order. His lips twitched. I'm devastatingly handsome and obscenely wealthy. It shouldn't be that difficult. Emma finally met his eyes and found them crinkled with humor. When had he started joking with her? When had the Ice King learned to smile? There, Alexander said softly. That look, that's what I need tomorrow. Emma's breath caught. The problem wasn't pretending to care about him. The problem was that she wasn't pretending anymore. The gala was a glittering affair of champagne, diamonds, and old money. Emma wore a borrowed designer gown, midnight blue silk that Alexander's stylist had insisted brought out her eyes. She felt like an imposter. Alexander's hand never left the small of her back as they navigated the crowd. Every touch was calculated, performative. But Emma's skin burned where he touched her anyway. Alexander Kane, as I live and breathe. A silver-haired man approached with a predatory smile. I heard you gotten married. Quite suddenly, wasn't it? When you know, you know. Alexander pulled Emma closer. James, meet my wife, Emma. Charming. James's eyes raked over Emma dismissively. Tell me, dear, what did you do before marrying into the Kane fortune? The implication was clear, gold digger. Emma opened her mouth, but Alexander beat her to it. My wife is a humanitarian who spent years working multiple jobs to support her dying mother. She has more integrity in her little finger than you've demonstrated in your entire career. His voice was ice. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have better company to keep. He steered Emma away, his hand gentle despite the steel in his voice. You didn't have to do that, Emma whispered. Yes, I did. Alexander looked down at her. and something in his expression made her heart stutter. Nobody insults you. Not while I'm standing here. After the gala, Emma found Alexander on the penthouse terrace, tie loosened, staring at the city lights. The November air was cold, but he didn't seem to notice. Emma grabbed a blanket and stepped outside. Without a word, she draped it over his shoulders and sat beside him on the bench. "You did well tonight," Alexander said quietly. "So did you. Very convincing, devoted husband." Was I? He turned to look at her, and in the dim light, his expression was unreadable. Convincing, I mean. Emma's pulse quickened. Very. Silence stretched between them, comfortable in a way it hadn't been 2 months ago. The city hummed below, but up here, it was just them and the stars. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said. "Always. Why did you really save me from the Zhao family that day?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because when I looked at you in that hotel suite, I didn't see a transaction. I saw someone who deserved better." He met her eyes. "Someone like me. Like you. Trapped by other people's plans. Performing a role instead of living a life." He gestured to the penthouse, the city, everything. "My grandfather built an empire and decided I'd inherit it. My father groomed me from birth to be the perfect heir. I went to the right schools, made the right connections, built the right company. And somewhere along the way, I forgot to ask if it was what I wanted." Emma's throat tightened. "Is it what you want?" "I don't know. I've never let myself want anything that wasn't part of the plan." Alexander looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole her breath. Until recently, the air between them charged with something electric. Emma's heart hammered. "Alexander, Emma, I need to tell you something." He shifted to face her fully. "These past 2 months you've—" His phone rang, shattering the moment. Alexander closed his eyes in frustration, then checked the screen. His expression changed. "It's the hospital. Your mother." Emma's world tilted. The surgery had gone well. Better than expected, the doctors said. Emma sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, watching her sleep peacefully for the first time in months. "She's going to make it," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. Alexander stood in the doorway, giving them space but staying close. When Emma finally stood on shaking legs, he was there, steady and solid. "Thank you," Emma said, "for everything. The surgery, the doctors, Stop thanking me." "But, Emma." Alexander cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "You don't owe me gratitude for caring about you." Her breath caught. "Is that what this is? Caring?" "Yes." His gray eyes held hers, intense and honest. "More than I should. More than the contract allows. But yes." They stood in the hospital corridor, the world reduced to the space between them. Alexander's hands were still on her face. Emma's heart was in her throat. "Alexander," she whispered, "what are we doing?" "I don't know." His voice was raw. "But I know I can't stop." He leaned closer. Emma's eyes fluttered closed. Their lips were inches apart. "Emma." Her mother's weak voice called from inside the room. "Sweetheart." They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Alexander cleared his throat. Emma pressed a hand to her racing heart. "We should," she started. "Yes," Alexander agreed quickly. "Go. She needs you." Emma went to her mother, but she felt Alexander's gaze on her back, heavy with everything they hadn't said, everything they couldn't say, because this was supposed to be business. A 6-month contract. Nothing more. So why did it feel like Emma was falling in love with her temporary husband? And worse, why did it seem like he was falling too? That night, back at the penthouse, Emma lay awake in her bed in the East Wing. Down the hall in the West Wing, Alexander wasn't sleeping either. They were both thinking the same thing. The contract said 6 months. We're barely halfway through. What happens when we can't pretend anymore? Neither had an answer, but both knew that something had shifted tonight. Something that couldn't be unsigned or nullified or professionally terminated. Something that felt dangerously like love. 3 weeks after the surgery, Emma's world shattered. "I'm sorry, Miss Chun." The doctor's voice on the phone was gentle, practiced. "Your mother developed a post-surgical infection. We did everything we could, but her body was too weak. She passed an hour ago." Emma stood in the penthouse kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, the words not making sense. Her mother had been improving, getting stronger. They talked yesterday about her coming home next week. They made plans. The phone slipped from Emma's hand and clattered on the marble floor. She didn't remember falling, didn't remember screaming. But suddenly Alexander was there, pulling her into his arms, holding her together while she shattered into 1,000 pieces. She's gone. Emma sobbed into his chest. She's gone. She's gone. I know. I've got you. Alexander's voice was rough, his arms iron bands around her shaking body. I'm not letting go. I've got you. Emma cried until she had nothing left, until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen and her body fell hollow. Through it all, Alexander held her, one hand stroking her hair, whispering words she couldn't hear but somehow needed. When she finally quieted, exhausted and empty, Alexander lifted her, and carried her to his wing of the penthouse. Not hers, his. He laid her on his bed, covered her with his blanket, and sat beside her, his hand never leaving hers. Don't leave, Emma whispered. I won't. Promise. I promise. Emma fell asleep to the sound of Alexander's heartbeat, steady and strong, the only thing anchoring her to reality. The funeral was small. Emma's mother had outlived most of her friends, and Richard didn't bother showing up. It was just Emma, a handful of neighbors, and Alexander, who stood beside her throughout the service, his hand on her lower back, steady and grounding. When Emma broke down at the graveside, Alexander pulled her in his chest and let her cry, uncaring that they were in public, that people were watching, that this went far beyond their contract. Afterwards, back at the penthouse, Emma found a folder on the kitchen counter. Medical bills, all marked paid in full. But these weren't from the surgery. These were from months before she'd ever met Alexander. Her hand shook as she flipped through them. Hospital stays, treatments, medications, experimental therapies, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Alexander appeared in the doorway, still in his funeral suit. You paid for all of this? Emma's voice cracked. Even before the surgery? Yes. But why? The contract only covered. The contract was bullshit, Emma. Alexander's voice was fierce. Your mother was dying, and I had the means to help. What was I supposed to do? Watch her suffer because it wasn't an illegal document? You never told me, because you would have felt like you owed me more than you already thought you did. He crossed the room, his eyes intense. You don't owe me anything. Not for this. Not for caring about you. Emma's tears spilled over. I don't understand you. I don't understand myself anymore. Alexander's voice dropped to a whisper. Not since you. Emma couldn't sleep alone after that. Every time she tried, she'd wake up gasping, drowning in grief and emptiness. So she'd wander to Alexander's wing, and he'd wordlessly make space for her on his couch, wrap her in a blanket, and work on his laptop while she found comfort in his presence. One night, 2 weeks after the funeral, Emma woke on that couch to find herself using Alexander's shoulder as a pillow. His laptop was closed on the coffee table. His arm was around her, holding her close, even in sleep. Morning light filtered through the windows, golden and soft. Emma shifted slightly, and Alexander's eyes opened. They stared at each other, faces inches apart, his arms still around her waist. Neither moved. Hi, Emma whispered. Hi. Alexander's voice was rough with sleep, his gray eyes searching hers. How did you sleep? Better than I have in weeks. Emma's heart hammered. You? Best sleep I've had in years. The air between them was charged, electric. Alexander's hand moved from her waist to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Emma's breath caught. Emma. Alexander breathed. I. His phone rang, harsh and insistent. They sprang apart. Alexander grabbed it, his expression darkening as he read the screen. It's the hospital. His voice was hollow. My grandfather. Alexander's grandfather died 3 days later, with Alexander and Emma at his bedside. The old man had been in and out of consciousness, but in his final lucid moment, he squeezed Alexander's hand and looked at Emma. Take care of my boy, he rasped. He pretends he doesn't need anyone, but he needs you. I will. Emma promised, tears streaming. The old man smiled, then turned to Alexander. You love her. I can see it. Don't be a fool like I was. Don't let work and pride steal your happiness. Promise me. I promise, Alexander said, his voice breaking. Good boy. The old man's eyes closed. Good boy. The heart monitor flatlined. Alexander didn't cry. He just sat there, holding his grandfather's hand, his face carved from stone. But Emma saw the way his shoulders shook, the way his jaw clenched against the pain. She took his other hand and held it tight. Later, in a hospital parking lot, Alexander finally broke. He leaned against his car and sobbed, deep, wrenching sounds that came from somewhere primal. Emma wrapped her arms around him and held him the way he'd held her. "I've got you," she whispered against his chest. "I'm not letting go." They stood there as the sun set, two people who'd started as strangers in a contract, now bound by something far deeper than signatures and terms. Grief, trust, love. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. Alexander's lawyer warned him that his uncle was contesting the inheritance, claiming the marriage was fraudulent. "They'll investigate," the lawyer said grimly. "If they can prove the marriage is a sham, you'll lose your grandfather's shares. Worse, you could face fraud charges." Alexander sat in his office, the weight of it all pressing down. Emma found him there at midnight, staring at nothing. "You should go," Alexander said without looking at her. "Before this gets messy." "No, Emma. No." She crossed the room and knelt in front of his chair, forcing him to look at her. "We're in this together. You held me through the worst pain of my life. You think I'm abandoning you now. If they prove the marriage is fake, you could be implicated too. Then we make sure they can't prove it." Emma took his hands. "Alexander, look at me. This stopped being fake for me a long time ago. When did it stop being fake for you?" Alexander stared at her, his eyes raw with emotion. "The day you made instant ramen in my kitchen and told me you didn't want to owe me anything. The day I realized you weren't afraid of me or impressed by me. You just saw me. I still see you." "Emma." Alexander pulled her up and into his lap, cradling her face in his hands. "If I do this, if I tell you how I feel, there's no going back. The contract becomes meaningless. This becomes real. It already is real." Emma's voice was steady, certain. "The only fake thing is pretending it's not." Alexander searched her eyes, then made his decision. He kissed her, softly at first, tentatively, like she was something precious that might break. Then deeper, years of loneliness and longing poured into one perfect moment. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "I love you," Alexander whispered. "Contract be damned. I love you. I love you too." Emma kissed him again, softer this time. "So what do? We fight. Together." Alexander stood, pulling her with him. "And we win." But even as he said it, his phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. "Uncle's investigators have evidence. Meeting tomorrow. This doesn't look good." Alexander's face went pale. Everything was about to fall apart. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and bad news. Alexander sat across from Jonathan Pierce, his family's attorney for 3 decades, while Emma waited in the reception area. The manila folder on the desk between them might as well have been a bomb. "Your uncle's investigators have been thorough," Jonathan said, sliding photos across the mahogany surface. "Separate bedrooms. No joint bank accounts. No photos together before your grandfather's illness. The sudden marriage 3 weeks before his death." He paused. "Alexander, this looks exactly like what it is. A contract marriage designed to satisfy the will. We fell in love." Alexander's voice was steel. "That's not fraud. Can you prove it? In court, under oath, with your wife's future on the line?" Jonathan leaned forward. "Because if this goes to trial and they prove fraud, it's not just your inheritance at stake. Emma could face conspiracy charges. Prison time. Her entire life destroyed because she signed a contract with you." Alexander's blood ran cold. She didn't." "I know, but the law doesn't care about intent. It cares about evidence." Jonathan pulled out another document. "However, I have a solution. If Emma leaves now, if the marriage naturally breaks down before the will is fully executed, we can claim irreconcilable differences. No fraud, no investigation. She walks away clean. And if she stays, then we go to war, and Emma becomes collateral damage." Alexander stared at the photos. Emma laughing at a charity gala. Emma sleeping on his couch, peaceful and safe. Emma kissing him last night, whispering "I love you" like a prayer. He had 2 choices: fight and risk destroying her, or let her go and save her. It wasn't really a choice at all. Emma knew something was wrong the moment Alexander returned to the penthouse. His face was a mask, the same cold, distant expression he'd worn the day they'd met. The warmth from last night, the man who'd kissed her and whispered "I love you," had vanished. "We need to talk." Alexander's voice was flat. Emma's stomach dropped. "What happened to the lawyers?" "The contract is terminated. Effective immediately." He pulled out a checkbook, wrote something with mechanical precision, and handed it to her. 500,000 as agreed, plus 200,000 severance. Emma stared at the check, her hands numb. "What are you talking about?" "The arrangement is over. My grandfather is dead. I got what I needed." Alexander wouldn't meet her eyes. "You're free to go." "Free to?" "Alexander, what about last night?" "What about?" "Last night was a mistake." His voice was ice. "I got caught up in the moment. Grief makes people do irrational things. But this was always temporary, Emma. You knew that." The words hit her like physical blows. "You're lying." "I'm being honest for the first time since we started this charade." Alexander finally looked at her, and his eyes were empty. "You were a means to an end. The contract is fulfilled. There's nothing keeping you here." "Nothing." Emma's voice cracked. "What about the fact that I love you? You love the idea of me, the savior who rescued you from poverty." Alexander's tone was cruel, clinical. "But that's not love, Emma. That's gratitude. And I don't need your gratitude anymore." Emma felt tears burning, but she refused to let them fall. "Look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me." Alexander met her gaze, and for just a moment, she saw it, the agony, the desperation, the lie. But then he shuddered it away. "I don't love you," he said flatly. "I never did." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's hand shook as she took the check. "Fine, if that's how you want to play this." She headed toward her bedroom, then stopped. "You know what the saddest part is? I actually believed you were different. That you saw me as more than a transaction." She laughed bitterly. "Guess the joke's on me." "Emma." "No." She turned, and now the tears were falling. "You don't get to say my name like it matters. You don't get to pretend this hurts you when you're the one ending it." She wiped her eyes angrily. "Thank you for the transaction, Mr. Kane. It's been profitable." She walked away, spine straight, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Emma packed her single suitcase. She'd arrive with one. She'd leave with one. Everything else in that penthouse was borrowed, temporary, fake, just like she'd been. She paused at the door to Alexander's wing. Part of her wanted to storm in, to demand the truth, to fight for what they had. But Emma had spent her whole life fighting for scraps of affection from people who didn't want her. She wouldn't beg, not even for him. The elevator ride down felt like falling. The lobby was bright, bustling, oblivious to her pain. Emma stepped outside into the autumn air and realized she had nowhere to go. She couldn't stay in this city. Everywhere she looked, she'd see him. The coffee shop where she used to work. The hospital where her mother died. The hotel where this whole nightmare began. Emma pulled out her phone and booked a bus ticket to anywhere else. Alexander stood at his penthouse window, watching Emma's small figure disappear into a taxi. His fist was clenched so tight his knuckles were white. "Sir." His assistant had arrived for their morning meeting. "Are you all right?" "Cancel everything." Alexander's voice was hollow. "I need to be alone." After the assistant left, Alexander walked through the penthouse like a ghost. Emma's instant ramen was still in the cupboard. Her favorite tea in the kitchen. The blanket she'd used on his couch, still carrying her scent. He picked up the grocery receipt from their first dinner together, the one he'd kept in his desk drawer like a talisman. Stared at it until the numbers blurred. His phone buzzed. "Jonathan Pierce. She's gone. No investigation. You're safe." "Safe." Alexander laughed. A broken, bitter sound. He'd save her from prison, but destroyed her anyway. He'd chosen her future over their present, her freedom over his happiness. It was the right choice, the noble choice. So why did it feel like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life? Alexander collapsed into his office chair, head in his hands. Around him, the penthouse echoed with Emma's absence. Vast, luxurious, and utterly empty. He'd spent his whole life in a cage of expectations, and for 4 months, Emma had made him feel free. Now she was gone, and the bars were closing in again. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm so sorry." But sorry wouldn't bring her back. Sorry wouldn't undo the cruelty in his words or the pain in her eyes. Sorry was just another thing he'd have to live with, along with the memory of the only woman he'd ever loved walking away, believing he'd never loved her at all. Emma sat on a bus heading north, watching the city shrink in the distance. The check was in her purse, $700,000 that felt like blood money. The price of her heart, paid in full. She pulled out her phone and typed a message she'd never sent. I know you were lying. I know you love me. But I also know you made a choice to protect me instead of fight for us. Maybe that's love too. Maybe loving someone means letting them go, even when it destroys you both. I hope you're happy, Alexander. I hope whatever you're protecting me from was worth this. Because I would have chosen you. Prison, scandal, ruin. I would have chosen you every time. She deleted it, word by word, until the screen was blank. Then Emma Chun, who'd survived poverty, exploitation, loss, and heartbreak, pressed her forehead against the cold bus window and let herself shatter one more time. Tomorrow, she'd rebuild. Tomorrow, she'd be strong. But tonight, she'd mourn the man she loved and the future they'd never have. Miles apart, both Emma and Alexander lay awake in the darkness, thinking the same thing. I made the right choice. I saved them. I did the right thing. Neither believed it. And in the morning, when they woke up alone, the lie became a little easier to tell themselves. The first day was the hardest, then the second, then the 100th. Eventually, they stopped counting, but neither ever stopped remembering. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and bad news. Alexander sat across from Jonathan Pierce, his family's attorney for 3 decades, while Emma waited in the reception area. The manila folder on the desk between them might as well have been a bomb. Your uncle's investigators have been thorough, Jonathan said, sliding photos across the mahogany surface. Separate bedrooms. No joint bank accounts. No photos together before your grandfather's illness. The sudden marriage 3 weeks before his death. He paused. Alexander, this looks exactly like what it is. A contract marriage designed to satisfy the will. We fell in love. Alexander's voice was steel. That's not fraud. Can you prove it? In court, under oath, with your wife's future on the line. Jonathan leaned forward. Because if this goes to trial and they prove fraud, it's not just your inheritance at stake. Emma could face conspiracy charges. Prison time. Her entire life destroyed because she signed a contract with you. Alexander's blood ran cold. That's not, she didn't. I know. But the law doesn't care about intent. It cares about evidence. Jonathan pulled out another document. However, I have a solution. If Emma leaves now, if the marriage naturally breaks down before the will is fully executed, we can claim irreconcilable differences. No fraud. No investigation. She walks away clean. And if she stays, then we go to war. And Emma becomes collateral damage. Alexander stared at the photos. Emma laughing at a charity gala. Emma sleeping on his couch, peaceful and safe. Emma kissing him last night, whispering I love you like a prayer. He had 2 choices. Fight and risk destroying her, or let her go and save her. It wasn't really a choice at all. Emma knew something was wrong the moment Alexander returned to the penthouse. His face was a mask, the same cold, distant expression he'd worn the day they'd met. The warmth from last night, the man who'd kissed her and whispered I love you, had vanished. We need to talk. Alexander's voice was flat. Emma's stomach dropped. What happened at the lawyer's? The contract is terminated. Effective immediately. He pulled out a checkbook, wrote something with mechanical precision, and handed it to her. $500,000 as agreed, plus $200,000 severance. Emma stared at the check, her hands numb. What are you talking about? The arrangement is over. My grandfather is dead. I got what I needed. Alexander wouldn't meet her eyes. You're free to go. Free to. Alexander, what about last night? What about? Last night was a mistake. His voice was ice. I got caught up in the moment. Grief makes people do irrational things. But this was always temporary, Emma. You knew that. The words hit her like physical blows. You're lying. I'm being honest for the first time since we started this charade. Alexander finally looked at her, and his eyes were empty. You were a means to an end. The contract is fulfilled. There's nothing keeping you here. Nothing. Emma's voice cracked. What about the fact that I love you? You love the idea of me. The savior who rescued you from poverty. Alexander's tone was cruel, clinical. But that's not love, Emma. That's gratitude. and I don't need your gratitude anymore. Emma felt tears burning, but she refused to let them fall. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me. Alexander met her gaze, and for just a moment, she saw it. The agony, the desperation, the lie. But then he shuddered it away. I don't love you, he said flatly. I never did. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's hand shook as she took the check. Fine, if that's how you want to play this. She headed toward her bedroom, then stopped. You know what the saddest part is? I actually believed you were different. That you saw me as more than a transaction. She laughed bitterly. Guess the joke's on me. Emma. No. She turned, and now the tears were falling. You don't get to say my name like it matters. You don't get to pretend this hurts you when you're the one ending it. She wiped her eyes angrily. Thank you for the transaction, Mr. Kane. It's been profitable. She walked away, spine straight, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Emma packed her single suitcase. She'd arrive with one. She'd leave with one. Everything else in that penthouse was borrowed, temporary, fake, just like she'd been. She paused at the door to Alexander's wing. Part of her wanted to storm in, to demand the truth, to fight for what they had. But Emma had spent her whole life fighting for scraps of affection from people who didn't want her. She wouldn't beg, not even for him. The elevator ride down felt like falling. The lobby was bright, bustling, oblivious to her pain. Emma stepped outside into the autumn air and realized she had nowhere to go. She couldn't stay in this city. Everywhere she looked, she'd see him. The coffee shop where she used to work. The hospital where her mother died. The hotel where this whole nightmare began. Emma pulled out her phone and booked a bus ticket to anywhere else. Alexander stood at his penthouse window, watching Emma's small figure disappear into a taxi. His fist was clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Sir, his assistant had arrived for their morning meeting. Are you all right? Cancel everything. Alexander's voice was hollow. I need to be alone. After the assistant left, Alexander walked through the penthouse like a ghost. Emma's instant ramen was still in the cupboard. Her favorite tea in the kitchen. The blanket she'd used on his couch, still carrying her scent. He picked up the grocery receipt from their first dinner together, the one he'd kept in his desk drawer like a talisman. Stared at it until the numbers blurred. His phone buzzed. Jonathan Pierce. She's gone. No investigation. You're safe. Safe. Alexander laughed. A broken, bitter sound. He'd save her from prison, but destroyed her anyway. He'd chosen her future over their present, her freedom over his happiness. It was the right choice, the noble choice. So why did it feel like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life? Alexander collapsed into his office chair, head in his hands. Around him, the penthouse echoed with Emma's absence. Vast, luxurious, and utterly empty. He'd spent his whole life in a cage of expectations, and for 4 months, Emma had made him feel free. Now she was gone, and the bars were closing in again. I'm sorry, he whispered to the empty room. I'm so sorry. But sorry wouldn't bring her back. Sorry wouldn't undo the cruelty in his words or the pain in her eyes. Sorry was just another thing he'd have to live with, along with the memory of the only woman he'd ever loved walking away, believing he'd never loved her at all. Emma sat on a bus heading north, watching the city shrink in the distance. The check was in her purse, $700,000 that felt like blood money. The price of her heart, paid in full. She pulled out her phone and typed a message she'd never sent. I know you were lying. I know you love me. But I also know you made a choice, to protect me instead of fight for us. Maybe that's love too. Maybe loving someone means letting them go, even when it destroys you both. I hope you're happy, Alexander. I hope whatever you're protecting me from was worth this. Because I would have chosen you. Prison, scandal, ruin. I would have chosen you every time. She deleted it, word by word, until the screen was blank. Then Emma Chun, who'd survived poverty, exploitation, loss, and heartbreak, pressed her forehead against the cold bus window and let herself shatter one more time. Tomorrow, she'd rebuild. Tomorrow, she'd be strong. But tonight, she'd mourn the man she loved and the future they'd never have. Miles apart, both Emma and Alexander lay awake in the darkness, thinking the same thing. I made the right choice. I saved them. I did the right thing. Neither believed it. And in the morning, when they woke up alone, the lie became a little easier to tell themselves. The first day was the hardest. then the second, then the 100th. Eventually, they stopped counting. But neither ever stopped remembering. Emma. The morning sun streamed through Emma's apartment window. Modest, clean, hers. She'd chosen every piece of furniture, paid every bill, built this life from nothing but determination and a check she'd almost thrown away. Miss Chun, the photographer from Metropolitan Living, is here. Her assistant, Maya, poked her head into the office. They want to feature the foundation in their Women Changing the World issue. Emma looked around her office, the small room that had become headquarters for Second Chances Foundation. What had started as a desperate idea on a bus 2 years ago now employed 15 people and operated in 8 cities. Tell them I'll be ready in 5 minutes. Emma caught her reflection in the window. Short hair, she'd cut a year ago, shedding the girl who'd let others define her. Business suit she'd bought with her own money. Confidence earned through surviving the impossible. She barely recognized herself. That was the point. The interview was easier than expected. Emma had gotten good at telling her story, the parts that mattered, anyway. Poverty, exploitation, the contract marriage that taught her how many women were trapped in similar situations. She never mentioned his name, never said Alexander Kane, just referred to him as someone who showed me I deserved better, even if I had to walk away to prove it. After the photographer left, Emma sat at her desk and allowed herself 60 seconds, her daily ritual. 60 seconds to remember his smile, his hand on her back at the gala, the way he'd held her when her mother died, the kiss that felt like coming home. Then she closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and put Alexander back in the locked box in her heart where he lived permanently. Boss, Maya interrupted. You got an invitation. National Charity Gala next month. They want to honor the foundation. Emma almost declined. She hated attention, preferred the quiet work of helping women escape predatory contracts. But Maya was right. The platform could help more people. Accept it, Emma said. But keep the speech short. She didn't know that accepting would change everything. Alexander. Forbes magazine called him the billionaire who never sleeps. They meant it as a compliment. Alexander knew it was a diagnosis. He sat in his corner office, top floor, glass walls, view of the entire city, and felt nothing. Kane Enterprises had tripled in value. He'd acquired 6 competitors, launched in 12 countries, made more money than 3 generations could spend. None of it meant anything. Sir, the board wants your approval on the merger. His assistant, David, placed documents on the desk. Also, Mrs. Wellington's daughter would like to. No, you haven't heard what. Whatever social engagement, blind date, or networking opportunity you're about to suggest, the answer is no. Alexander signed the merger papers without reading them. Anything else? David hesitated. Sir, with respect, you can't keep living like this. You work 20 hours a day. You don't date. You barely eat. Your grandfather wouldn't want. My grandfather is dead. Alexander's voice was flat. And what I want doesn't matter. What matters is the company. That's all that's ever mattered. After David left, Alexander opened his desk drawer. Inside, a grocery receipt, faded and creased for being handled too many times. Their first dinner together. Terrible pasta they'd laughed about for hours. He'd kept it for 743 days. Now it was 1,108 days. But who was counting? You are, a voice whispered in his head. You're still counting. Alexander closed the drawer and returned to work. Work was safe. Work didn't ask him to feel things. Work didn't remind him that he'd sent away the only person who'd ever made him want to be more than just Kane Enterprises CEO. His phone buzzed. An invitation, National Charity Gala. They wanted him as keynote speaker. The cause was supporting vulnerable women's organizations. Alexander almost declined. Almost. But something made him pause. Guilt, maybe, or the memory of Emma telling him about women trapped like she'd been. Accept it, he told David, and make a significant donation to all the featured organizations. Anonymous. He didn't look at the list of organizations. Didn't see Second Chances Foundation or the name of its founder. If he had, maybe he would have known. Maybe he would have prepared. Or maybe he still would have gone, because some part of him was always searching for her, even if he'd never admit it. Parallel moments. Emma, in therapy. I've been thinking about forgiveness, Emma told Dr. Rodriguez. Not for what he did. For what I didn't do. What do you mean? I knew he was lying when he said he didn't love me. I knew he was pushing me away to protect me from something. But I left anyway. I was so afraid of being unwanted that I didn't fight for us. Emma's voice cracked. Maybe if I'd stayed. You can't save someone who won't let you. You made the only choice available to you. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. The question isn't whether you should have fought harder. The question is, if you saw him today, what would you do differently? Emma didn't have an answer. Alexander, visiting his grandfather's grave. I kept the company, Alexander said to the headstone. Expanded it. Made you proud, I think. He paused. But I lost her. And every day for 3 years, I've wondered if you'd say I made the wrong choice. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. You told me not to let pride steal my happiness. But it wasn't pride. It was fear. Alexander's voice broke. I was so afraid of destroying her that I destroyed us instead. And now I don't know how to stop being this person. This empty shell who just works and exists but never lives. A cardinal landed on the headstone, bright red against gray granite. His grandfather's favorite bird. Is it you telling me something? Alexander laughed bitterly. Because if it is, I don't understand. The cardinal chirped once, then flew away. Alexander stayed until sunset, talking to a dead man who couldn't answer, asking questions he was too afraid to confront. Preparing for the gala. Emma's apartment. Evening. Maya had insisted on helping her get ready. The dress was elegant, midnight blue, similar to the one she'd worn to that first gala with Alexander. Emma had almost chosen something different, but something perverse made her want it. You look amazing, Maya said. Any chance of a hot date at this thing? I'm there to accept an award, not find a man. You know, it's been 2 years. You're allowed to move on. Emma met her own eyes in the mirror. I have moved on. I built a whole life. That's moving on. That's surviving. It's not the same thing. After Maya left, Emma stood alone in her apartment, looking at the invitation. Same hotel where she'd met Alexander. Different ballroom, different purpose, different her. You're not that scared girl anymore, she told her reflection. You're strong, successful. You don't need anyone. So why did her hand shake as she put on her earrings? Alexander's penthouse. Same evening. Alexander stood in front of his closet, staring at suits that all looked identical. David had written his keynote speech, something about second chances and redemption. Alexander had barely glanced at it. His phone rang. Jonathan Pierce, his lawyer. Just checking in before the gala tomorrow, Jonathan said. Your uncle's lawsuit was dismissed. Officially. You're in the clear. After 3 years. Alexander's laugh was hollow. Good to know. Alexander, what you did, sending her away, it saved both of you from a very ugly legal battle. You made the right choice. Did I? Alexander pulled out his tuxedo. Because it's been 3 years, and it still feels like the worst mistake of my life. You protected her. I pushed her away without giving her a choice. I made the same mistake everyone else did. Decided what was best for her without asking. Alexander's voice hardened. That's not love. That's just another cage. After hanging up, Alexander found himself in Emma's old wing of the penthouse. He'd kept it exactly as she'd left it. Dust-covered but untouched. A shrine to his cowardice. Tomorrow, he'd give a speech about second chances to a room full of people. Then he'd come home to this empty palace and continue the half-life he'd built for himself. 3 years ago, he'd had everything. Now he had nothing that mattered. The morning of the gala. Emma woke at dawn, stomach in knots. The speech was written. The dress was ready. She just had to get through one evening. She pulled up the gala program on her phone, scrolling through the schedule. Cocktail hour. Award ceremony. Keynote address by. Emma's blood froze. Keynote speaker. Alexander Kane, CEO of Kane Enterprises. Her phone slipped from her hands. He would be there. At the same event. In the same hotel where they'd met and ended. Emma's first instinct was to cancel. But Maya would ask why. The foundation would lose the exposure. And more importantly, Imogen didn't run anymore. Fine, she said to her empty apartment. Let him see what he lost. Let him see that I survived him. She picked up her phone and blocked his name from her search history. A futile gesture, but it made her feel like she had some control. Alexander's penthouse. Alexander reviewed the donor list one more time before leaving. His assistant had flagged the organizations receiving funds. He skimmed the names without really reading them. Then his eyes caught on one entry. Second Chances Foundation, founded by Emma Chun, supporting women escaping exploitative contracts. Alexander's heart stopped. Emma, his Emma, would be at the gala. He grabbed his phone, started calling David to cancel, then stopped. What was he so afraid of? Seeing her, realizing she'd built an incredible life without him, knowing that she'd moved on while he stayed frozen? Maybe that's what I need, Alexander said to his reflection. To see her happy, to know she's okay, to finally let her go. He didn't believe a word of it, but he got in the car anyway. The hotel. Emma arrived early, hoping to avoid crowds. The Grandview Hotel looked exactly the same. Marble lobby, crystal chandeliers, the ghost of the girl she used to be hovering in every corner. Emma-chun, a coordinator approached with a clipboard. We have you in the gold ballroom for the award ceremony. The reception is in the main hall first. Emma nodded, then froze. Where is the keynote speech? Main hall, right after the reception. Mr. Kane specifically requested. I'll skip the reception. Emma's voice was too sharp. I'll come for the awards only. The coordinator looked confused but nodded. Emma ducked into a side corridor, heart racing. She could do this. She just had to avoid the reception, accept the award, and leave before. Emma. She turned, and there he was. Alexander Kane, standing in a hotel corridor, looking at her like he'd seen a ghost. They stared at each other, the world narrowing to just the space between them. 3 years of silence shattered in a single, breathless moment. Emma. Her name on his lips was a prayer, a curse, a question. 3 years of silence condensed into 2 syllables. Emma's first instinct was to run. Her second was to slap him. She didn't either. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his eyes with the composure she'd spent 3 years building. Alexander. Her voice was steady, professional. What a coincidence. Is it? Alexander took a tentative step closer, and Emma fought the urge to step back. He looked older, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, a hardness to his jaw that spoke of too many sleepless nights. I didn't know you'd be here. Neither did I. About you, I mean. Emma glanced toward the ballroom. I should go. The reception. Please. The word was raw. Please don't run. Not yet. I'm not running. I'm leaving. There's a difference. Emma. Mr. Kane. She made her voice ice. We had a contract. It ended 3 years ago. There's nothing left to discuss. She turned to walk away, and Alexander did something he'd regretted not doing 3 years ago. He followed. You're right, he called after her. The contract ended. But that's not why I'm following you. Emma stopped, but didn't turn around. Then why? Because I've spent 3 years regretting that I let you walk away. And I won't make that mistake twice. Now Emma turned, anger flashing in her eyes. You didn't let me walk away. You threw me out. You told me you never loved me, and that I was just... Her voice cracked. Just a means to an end. I lied. Inoyulit. Emma's composure shattered. I knew it then, and I know it now. But you made the choice anyway. You decided what was best for me without asking. Just like everyone else in my life. People were starting to stare. Alexander gently took Emma's elbow. Can we talk? Somewhere private. Emma wanted to say no. Wanted to maintain her dignity and walk away. But 3 years of unanswered questions won out. Fine. 5 minutes. Alexander led her to a terrace. Of course it was a terrace. Some cosmic joke, making them repeat their pattern. The November air was cold, and Emma immediately regretted not bringing a coat. Without a word, Alexander shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture was so familiar, so him, that Emma's throat tightened. Don't, she whispered. Don't what? Don't be kind. Don't act like you care. It makes this harder. Good. Alexander's voice was fierce. It should be hard. What I did to you was unforgivable, and you should make me work for every second of your time. Emma stared at him, thrown by his honesty. What happened, Alexander? What was so terrible that you had to push me away? My uncle was contesting the will. His investigators had proof our marriage started as a contract. If it went to trial, you would have faced fraud charges. Prison time. Alexander's hands clenched. The lawyer said if you left immediately, they'd drop the investigation. You'd be safe. So you made the decision for both of us. Yes. You decided I couldn't handle the truth. That I was too weak to fight beside you. Emma's voice shook with anger. You took away my choice. I was trying to protect you. I didn't need protection. I needed a partner. Emma stepped closer, poking his chest. I had just lost my mother. I was falling apart, and the one person I trusted, the one person I loved, told me I was nothing to him. Do you know what that did to me? I'm sorry. Alexander's voice broke. God, Emma, I'm so sorry. I thought if I was cruel enough, you'd hate me and move on. I thought I was saving you. From what? From loving you. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You can't save someone from their own heart, Alexander. And you don't get to make that choice for them. You're right. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. You're absolutely right. I did to you exactly what I hated others doing to me. Decided I knew better. Made choices for you without asking. I was a coward. Emma wiped her eyes angrily. Why are you telling me this now? It's been 3 years. What do you want from me? Nothing. Everything. Alexander met her eyes. I want to tell you the truth. That I've spent every day of the last 3 years regretting what I did. That I kept your grocery receipt in my desk drawer like some pathetic reminder of the only time I was ever truly happy. That I built an empire and felt nothing because you weren't there to share it with. Alexander, let me finish. Please. He took a shaky breath. I want to tell you that I'm sorry. That I was wrong. That if I could go back, I'd fight for us instead of pushing you away. His voice dropped to a whisper. And I want to ask if there's any chance, any possibility, that you might give me a second chance. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. A second chance at what? At us. At something real. No contract, no terms, no protection. Just me, loving you, and hoping you might still. He stopped. But if you've moved on, if you're happy, I'll walk away. I promise. Just tell me you're happy, and I'll leave you alone. You want to know if I'm happy? Emma laughed, but sounded broken. I build a foundation that helps hundreds of women. I have an apartment I love, a job that matters, friends who care about me. I'm successful, independent, everything I never thought I could be. That's not what I ask. I know what you ask. Emma's composure cracked. You want to know if I'm happy? If I move on? I haven't. Not really. I wake up every morning and give myself 60 seconds to remember you. 60 seconds to think about what we could have been. Then I lock you away and get through the day. Tears stream down her face now. So no, Alexander. I'm not happy, but I'm surviving. And that's more than I had 3 years ago. Emma. Alexander cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I don't want you to just survive. I want you to thrive. To be completely, genuinely happy. And if that's without me, I'll accept it. But if there's even a chance. What? Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. Why now? Why after all this time? Because I saw your name on that donor list and realized I'd been lying to myself for 3 years. I told myself I let you go because I loved you. But the truth is, I let you go because I was terrified. He pressed his forehead to hers. Terrified of losing you. Terrified of not being enough. Terrified that if you saw how broken I was, you'd leave anyway. You idiot. Emma's hands came up to grip his wrists. I saw how broken you were. I knew from the first day in that hotel suite that you were trapped just like me. And I loved you anyway. I loved you because you were broken and real and human. Past tense. Emma closed her eyes. I'm terrified too. Terrified that if I let you back in, you'll leave again. That I'll wake up one day and you'll decide I'm better off without you. I won't. I swear I won't. Alexander's voice was fervent. Emma, look at me. She did, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. I love you, Alexander said. I've loved you since the day you made instant ramen in my kitchen. I loved you when I sent you away. I've loved you every single day for 3 years. And I will love you for the rest of my life, whether you give me another chance or not. That's not fair, Emma whispered. What's not? You can't just show up after 3 years and say all the right things and expect. I don't expect anything. I'm just asking. Begging, actually. Alexander's voice was desperate. Is it too late? Have I destroyed this beyond repair? Emma searched his face. The man she'd loved, lost, and never forgotten. The man who'd saved her and broken her in equal measure. The man who was offering her his heart with no guarantee she wouldn't crush it. For the contract, yes, that's dead and gone. She felt him start to pull away and tighten her grip on his wrists. But for us, for something real, yes, maybe we're right on time. Emma pulled him closer, and their lips met in a kiss that was 3 years overdue. It was desperate and tender, angry and loving, an apology, and a promise all at once. Alexander's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close like he was afraid she'd disappear. Emma's hands tangled in his hair, anchoring herself to this moment. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, tears on both their faces. "I love you," Emma said. "I never stopped. Even when I hated you, I loved you. I love you too." Alexander kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again. "I'm sorry. For everything. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me. You'll have to start by Emma." Maya's voice called from the doorway. "The award ceremony is starting." Oh. She stopped, seeing them wrapped around each other. "Sorry. I'll just tell them it'll be a few minutes." "Emma Chun." A man in a tuxedo appeared behind Maya. "We need you for the Mr. Kane. Your keynote speech starts in 10 minutes. Emma and Alexander looked at each other and burst out laughing, the kind of laughter that comes from releasing 3 years of pain and tension. "Want to skip it?" Alexander asked, grinning. "Skip the awards ceremony I've been preparing for. And the keynote speech my assistant spent weeks writing. We can send donations and apologies later." Alexander held out his hand. "Or we can ditch our responsibilities and go figure out what happens next." Emma looked at his offered hand, then at the ballroom, full of expectations, then back at Alexander. "I've been responsible for 3 years," Emma said, taking his hand. "One night won't hurt." They ran, through the hotel corridors like teenagers, hand in hand, laughing as their assistants called after them. They burst out onto the street, breathless and grinning. "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "I don't know." Alexander pulled her close, kissing her again because he could. "Anywhere but here." They ended up at a 24-hour diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booze and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. Emma ordered pancakes at midnight. Alexander got eggs and bacon. They talked until the sun came up, about the last 3 years, about their regrets, about what came next. "So, where does this leave us?" Emma asked as dawn painted the sky pink. "I don't know," Alexander admitted. "But I know I want to figure it out together. No contract this time. No contract. No timeline. No rules." Alexander took her hand across the table. "Just us, seeing where this goes." Emma smiled. A real smile, the first genuinely happy one she'd had in 3 years. "I can work with that." Outside, the city was waking up. Inside, 2 people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances were finding each other again in the best ones. No contract. No expectations. Just love and second chances and the promise of tomorrow. 6 months later, Emma woke to the smell of burning toast and muffled cursing from the kitchen. She smiled, wrapping herself in Alexander's shirt, which had somehow become hers over the past 6 months, and padded down the hallway of her apartment. Their apartment, technically. Alexander had moved in 3 months ago after they'd both agreed his penthouse felt like a museum, while her modest space felt like home. "I can order breakfast," Alexander said without turning around, somehow sensing her presence. "I accept defeat. You're getting better." Emma wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her cheek against his back. "Last week you only burned 3 out of 4 pieces. Progress." He turned in her arms, kissing her forehead. "Though I maintain that cooking is a useless skill when you're a billionaire." Former billionaire who voluntarily downsized to live in a 1-bedroom apartment with his girlfriend. "Best decision I ever made." Alexander kissed her properly this time. "Second best, actually. First was signing that contract 3 years ago." Emma smiled against his lips. "You know what today is? How could I forget? 6 months since we ditched that gala and scandalized both our assistants. They've forgiven us." Maya said the publicity from our romantic disappearance actually helped the foundation's donations. "See? We did them a favor." Alexander rescued the toast before it became charcoal. "Speaking of the foundation, are you ready for the board meeting?" Emma's expression shifted to something more serious. "Ready as I'll ever be. The expansion of 15 cities is a big step. You've got this. And if anyone questions your leadership, they'll have to answer to me." "Alexander, I know. Your foundation, your decisions. I'm just a supportive boyfriend who writes large checks and keeps his mouth shut." He grinned. "But I'm allowed to be proud of you." "You're allowed." Emma grabbed the toast, spreading jam on the less burnt side. "And for the record, you're not just the supportive boyfriend. You're my partner." There's a difference. I like the sound of that. The foundation board meeting went perfectly. Emma presented the expansion plan with confidence she'd built over 3 years of running the organization. Alexander sat in the back row, watching her command the room, and felt his heart swell with pride. This was the woman he'd almost lost, the woman he'd pushed away out of fear, the woman who'd saved herself, and then built something beautiful from the ashes. After the meeting, as people filtered out, Emma's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. "It's Richard." Alexander was beside her in an instant. "You don't have to answer." "Actually, I do." Emma's voice was steady. "I've been avoiding this for 3 years. Time to stop running." She answered on speaker. "Emma, sweetheart." Richard's oily voice filled the room. "I saw you in Metropolitan Living. Very impressive. I always knew you'd do great things." "What do you want, Richard?" "Can a father call his daughter stepfather? And you lost that title when you sold me for $50,000. Emma's voice was ice. "I'll ask again. What do you want?" A pause. Then, "I'm in some financial trouble. I thought maybe, given your success, you could." "No. Emma, please. I helped raise you. You exploited me. You sold me to a family with a history of abuse. You prioritized money over my safety." Emma's hand found Alexander's. "So no, Richard. I won't give you money. I won't bail you out. And if you contact me again, I'll get a restraining order. Are we clear?" "You ungrateful little." Emma hung up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was strong when she spoke. "I should have done that 3 years ago. You weren't ready 3 years ago." Alexander pulled her into his arms. "But you are now. We are now." Emma corrected, leaning into him. "I couldn't have done that without you here." "Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to." That evening, Emma found Alexander on their tiny balcony, not the sprawling terrace of his penthouse, but a small space barely big enough for 2 chairs and a plant she kept forgetting to water. He was staring at something in his hands. "Is that the grocery receipt?" Alexander looked up, sheepish. "I know I'm supposed to be over the dramatic gestures, but I can't throw it away." Emma sat beside him, taking the faded paper. "From our first dinner together. The terrible pasta. The best terrible pasta I've ever had." Alexander took her hand. "Emma, I need to tell you something." Her stomach dropped. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous. Just important." He took a deep breath. "The legal issues from 3 years ago, the investigation, my uncle's lawsuit, it was all dismissed 6 months after you left. Jonathan called to tell me, but by then, you were gone and I didn't know how to find you. Didn't think I deserved to try." Emma stared at him. 6 months? But we spent 3 years apart. "I know. I told myself it was better that way. That you'd moved on and I shouldn't disrupt your life. But the truth is, I was terrified. Terrified you'd tell me it was too late. That I'd lost my chance." His gray eyes met hers. "I wasted 2.5 years being a coward." "We both wasted time," Emma said softly. "I could have looked for you too. But I was afraid of the same thing. That you'd moved on. That I was just a contract to you. That I wasn't enough. You were always enough. More than enough." Alexander stood, pulling her up with him. "Which is why I want to do this right this time." "Do what right?" "This." Alexander pulled a folded paper from his pocket, clearly handwritten, slightly crumpled. 6 months ago, you told me we'd figure this out together. No contract, no rules. And we have. We've built something real." Emma's eyes widened as she recognized her own handwriting on the paper. "Is that the contract you wrote 3 years ago? The one you showed me the night I proposed the first time?" Alexander unfolded it, reading, "Duration, forever, unless one of us becomes a serial killer. Compensation, unlimited love, terrible cooking, and shared grocery receipts. Duties, equal partnership, honest communication, occasional rescuing of each other. Termination clause, none. We figure it out together." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You kept it. Always." Alexander set the paper aside and pulled out a small velvet box. "Emma-chun, will you marry me? No contract, no terms, no protection. Just me, loving you, for as long as you'll have me. And this time, I promise, I'll never push you away again. When things get hard, we face them together." Emma was crying now, nodding before he even finished. "Yes, but I have one condition." "Anything. We get married at a courthouse. Small. Private. Just us. She smiled through tears. No big wedding. No family drama. No chance of ending up in the wrong suite with the wrong billionaire. Alexander laughed, sliding the ring onto her finger. Though I have to say, marrying the wrong billionaire worked out pretty well for you. For me too. Emma pulled him close, kissing him with 3 years of love and loss, and finding each other again. Best mistake I ever made. 1 year later. The courthouse wedding had been perfect. Emma in a simple dress. Alexander in a casual suit. Maya and David as witnesses. No performance, no pressure, just 2 people choosing each other completely. Now, Emma stood at her foundation's 5th anniversary gala, Alexander beside her, watching young women receive scholarships to escape exploitative situations just like she once had. You did this, Alexander whispered. All of this. We did this. Emma corrected. I couldn't have done it without your support. Your foundation, your vision. I just wrote checks. You gave me more than money. You gave me the courage to believe I deserved better, that I was worth fighting for. Emma squeezed his hand. You gave me myself back. On stage, a young woman was accepting an award, thanking the foundation for helping her escape a contract marriage that would have destroyed her. Emma's throat tightened. That could have been me, she whispered. If I'd signed with the Zhao family. If you hadn't intervened. It wasn't you. Because you're strong. You would have found a way out. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone. Later, back in their apartment, slightly bigger now, but still modest by Alexander's standards, they curled up on the couch together. Alexander was reading quarterly reports. Emma was working on expansion plans. Their feet were tangled together. A half-eaten pizza sat on the coffee table. Remember when you asked me if I was happy? Emma said suddenly. Alexander looked up. In the hotel corridor. Yeah, I told you I was surviving, but not happy. She set down her laptop. I want you to know, I'm happy now. Completely, genuinely happy. Good. Alexander pulled her closer. That's all I've ever wanted for you. What about you? Are you happy? Are you kidding? I get to wake up next to you every morning. Watch you change the world. Burn toast together. Fight over the last slice of pizza. He kissed her temple. I'm the happiest I've ever been. Emma looked at the man who'd started as a stranger in a contract, became her salvation, then her heartbreak, and finally her partner in everything that mattered. You know what I was thinking about today? How devastatingly handsome I am. Emma laughed. Besides that, I was thinking about that first day, when I walked into the wrong suite, signed the wrong contract, married the wrong man. And best wrong turn I ever took. Alexander smiled, pulling her in for a kiss. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, 2 people who'd found each other through contracts and chaos, pain and perseverance, had finally found what they'd been searching for all along. Not a transaction, not a performance, not a cage, just love. Real, messy, imperfect, beautiful love. And that was worth more than any contract could ever promise.